This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Thanks, everybody, for downloading the latest edition of DocNJock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me this week to recap all the nonsense that happened with the Detroit Lions is my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Boy, do we got a lot to talk about. Only the Detroit Lions could assemble one of the top NFL offenses and at the exact same time built one of the worst of all time, one of the defenses that is so embarrassing that Geno Smith marched into town and had supreme success. Now, I do have to tell you later on in the podcast, I'll share with you how a Detroit Lions fan, a broadcaster, and a reporter gets over a defensive performance. There's one thing you can do that makes it quite hilarious when the defense struggles, because I got to ask you, what the hell happened to the Lions defense? I didn't think it was going to be great, that unit, because of the fact you're dealing with injuries, it's young, but I didn't think it would be that bad. It was probably one of the all-time worst defensive performances that you're going to see in a given contest.
I have no idea. I wish I had the answers. If I had the answers, I could probably be doing Aaron Glenn's job, and we could possibly have a team that'd be in contention for the playoffs. I have no idea. I wish there was like one thing. We could just say, hey, it's the secondary, or hey, more specifically, it's the cornerbacks, or hey, it's the linebacking core, or hey, we're just not getting a pass rush. It's the pass rush. Dude, there are so many problems with this defense. It's not like it's one thing, and it is historically bad. This is a team that every week is rolling out a defense that makes that, I think it was like 2016. What was the 0-16 team? Was that 2000? That was 2013, right? That team? It's making the 0-16 team's defense look like it was capable. This defense is so porous. There are holes and gaps everywhere on it. I just don't understand how you could have a defense that, look, last year's defense was bad. Last year's defense wasn't very good. I think they were ranked 31st. All right. This year's defense is the worst in the NFL, and it is worst by a mile. I don't know how you go and you regress, especially when you factor in you've got Jeff Okudah, who has been a complete surprise and a monster standout and has looked really, really good. You've got a guy, a 6th-round pick in Malcolm Rodriguez, who, I don't know about you, I wasn't really counting on anything from him. He was a 6th-round pick when this team was put together. I was like, if you get some production, cool. And I was expecting production later in the year. I wasn't expecting him to be a starter. You know, as everything wore on, I think we penciled him in as a starter, but initially when he was drafted, I was like, if you get some production, he's a 6th-round pick. He'll be a rotational guy. Cool. No big deal. You're getting him. Like, he's an additional piece. You should be better because you're getting this guy. And then you add in, obviously you have Aiden Hutchinson who's supposed to be, providing a bit of a pass rush. You've got guys who I don't think either one of us counted on. And they're actually playing well, and yet this defense has regressed. I don't know how to fix it. I don't know where it went wrong, man.
It was crazy because you start to look at it, and what I think has bothered the coaching staff, Aaron Glenn, Dan Campbell, is Seattle looked at what the Lions did and said, okay, let's watch this film. Here's how we're going to attack it. And they supremely outcoached the Lions coaching staff. They knew that the Lions were going to be aggressive and at times going to be over-aggressive. So what do? You shift the line in certain ways in terms of blocking schemes so that you say, oh, you're going to blitz? Okay, no problem. We'll just run a gash, and this is how we can have Rashad Penny bust free. So you look at what the players said, that Seattle put in zero busters, which was plays specifically designed to defeat when the Lions didn't have any safeties deep, when they brought linebackers up. And they basically said, if you guys are going to do this, we're going to do that. And what stinks is, in essence, we all realized Sunday that Seattle's experienced coaching staff led by Pete Carroll outworked the Lions. They figured out, we're better than you. We're going to do this in terms of countering what you are able to do. And the Lions simply did not find any avenues to adapt to that, because that's what high-level football is I know what you're going to do, you know what I'm going to do, but when I see what you're doing to my move, I'm going to make the next counter. And that's probably the next evolution of Aaron Glenn, is to think, okay, what could the opponent do to us to try and beat this? And then enact a couple different layers of plays that will be utilized to help your defense. But the Lions, man, that
Wait, hold on. I want to build on something you said there. You basically said Aaron Glenn got outcoached, right? That Pete Carroll and his coaching staff essentially knew what the Lions were going to throw at them and knew the defense that Aaron Glenn was going to run. Aaron Glenn was a guy who just a few months ago was getting huge praise as possibly being the next high-profile head coach. This is a guy who has a pretty good resume. This is a guy who we're all going into the offseason, we were all afraid was going to leave for a head coaching job. You just basically got outcoached, like you said. Like, you have guys who looked at what you did and they were like, nah, we're just going to do this instead and we'll beat you. And that was what they did. They did that the entire game. It seemed like there was no adjustments. And when there were adjustments, they had the keys to those adjustments as well. Yes. You know, the naked bootleg that they constantly ran and ate them up. When Detroit finally keyed on it, all they did was they just had another guy running a little bit deeper and they just hit him with a pass. Like, so far outcoached. It was absolutely bananas. And this is a guy who is supposed to be the second coming of a head coach. I just don't see it. I don't see it. I think a lot of these issues with this defense, I don't know if they make it too complicated for these guys. I don't know if it's just too difficult or maybe they're thinking too much and they're just not playing fast enough. I'm not really sure. You're there more than I'm there. So I'm not really sure. But I think at some point, Aaron Glenn needs to be held accountable, and Aaron Glenn needs to stand up and say, hey, we got to make these adjustments. We got to make these changes. Like, at this point, to me, the problems with this defense all fall on Aaron Glenn's shoulders. He's completely embarrassed on Sunday.
So you don't think that the Lions defense lacks high-end talent when you're rolling linebackers like Chris Board and Alex Anzalone. You have Tracy Walker who's out, so you're forced to use a rookie in Kirby Joseph. You have a couple players. Now, I think that it's a combination of both. I don't think you have a good defensive line unit outside of
you and I both agree that this team does not have high-end talent on the defense, right? You and I both agree. But I think we both agree that going into this season, and right now, you are getting contributions from guys that you didn't count on. You basically brought the band back from last year, and then you added a guy like Aiden Hutchinson. You added a Malcolm Rodriguez. You're getting play out of Jeff Okudah. You didn't get anything out of Jeff Okudah last year. You added these guys into the fold as well. I feel like the defense should be at least a few steps further. Look, with the way this offense is humming along and the way that this offense is going, you don't have to be really good on defense. You just can't be historically bad.
Correct.
You could be a 30th ranked defense and you're going to win games. Instead, you're blowing games. You're losing games by 3 and 4 and 5 points every single week because your defense is so damn bad. I expected this defense to be better. I did not expect this defense to be great by any means. I expected it to be better than what you had last year, and it is absolutely abysmal right now. That's my big issue with it.
Absolutely, and that's the terrible part is that the Lions offense, to juxtapose it, is playing so well. All the defense it has to do is be bad, just not be historically bad. That's how bad it was because the Seahawks did not punt. And this is not a defense that's like the Rams-esque kind of defense. This is Geno Smith, who was averaging 16 points. This was a football team that could have been had. But it's unfortunately, this game was a cavalcade of errors. They couldn't pressure. They couldn't get to Geno Smith. He found holes that were so large that he could take advantage of what the Lions were doing. And that's where this stunk, was that once they saw what was going on in the first half, the defense didn't do a good enough job to adapt or do anything to stop. And you saw online, the film speaks for itself. Everybody online said, hey, what are the Lions trying to do in these certain situations? Why are they being so aggressive? in these certain scenarios, and it just became a huge mistake. Play after play, scheme after scheme, drive after drive, you just saw that the Seahawks got and took full advantage, which wasted a great offensive performance by T.J. Hockenson. You got to remember, too, the Lions scored a significant amount of points without Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Swift, and you still have Jameson Williams not available. So this is crazy in that you're wasting quality offensive performances because your defense is atrocious. It's not even at the level of competent in any way, shape, or form. And the fear is that moving forward, it's not going to get a lot better. So you know what narrative is now surfaced, Cuz? And I'm curious to get your opinion, because I disagree with the way in which people have started to talk about it. But I think that the pick of Jameson Williams excites me, that when you now see this offense scoring damn near 35 points plus per game, and you're going to add a deep threat, all we're going to be looking for is like just 10% improvement over the next month from this defense, and maybe the offense can get to historic scoring levels and have the opportunity. I don't ascribe to those that say, well, now you see this offense that is performing at a high level with Jameson Williams. You don't need him, so maybe they should have taken the likes of a Jordan Davis or stayed and not made the trade and taken another defensive player like a Nakobe Dean or anything like that. I think that when you look at it, there's still hope that the Lions in the 2023 draft can draft 5 or 6 players, use some free agency dollars to bring in some more defensive players. I am thrilled that one side of the football is excelling and now is going to get more weapons and get healthier. I think that we can basically say this is a supremely talented offensive team that just needs its defense to not be extremely bad. So the bar is low for the defense, but I'm still happy the Lions have Jameson Williams, because boy, was that, even though the defense sucked and we're pissed, it ended up being a loss. That was one of the most entertaining football games I think I've sat through in a damn near 5 years.
Yeah, I don't really subscribe to the whole thing of they should have did something different. I thought it was a ballsy move. I think in the end it'll pay off when Jameson Williams actually gets on the field, and I think this offense will be electric. I had a really low bar for Jared Goff this year, and he is surprising me. This offense is surprising me. This offense looks incredible right now. I don't subscribe that they should have did anything different. I think the thing that's hurting them defensively are the draft picks that Brad Holmes has drafted. You're not getting any production from any of your second round picks. You've got guys on this roster that haven't seen the field, whether they're injured or whether they're just not good enough, or they're not going to be good enough. And I think that's the real issue. You look at what they did this year with their second round pick. You look at what they did last year with their second round pick. You have to hit on those. Those guys have to be on the field. And those guys have to help you out and have to perform. And you've got nothing. You've got nothing from them. So whether you drafted them and you can say that, yeah, we knew that they were going to be sidelined for a little bit, or yeah, we drafted them and then they ended up getting hurt. Like whatever the case may be, Brad Holmes is culpable for helping put this roster together and putting these guys out on the defensive side of the ball. And they're just not there. They're not on the field. They're not producing. And that's part of an issue, I think. I think that's a big issue. You have no idea what this defense is supposed to look like because you haven't seen it as it's supposed to be fully constructed. And that's a bit of a problem. When you've got guys who can't get on the field because they're dealing with injuries and they were drafted high, that becomes a bit of an issue. And I think that is where a lot of focus should probably go. I feel like Brad Holmes should not go unscathed from this. We can crucify Aaron Glenn all we want, but at the same point, you've got to take Brad Holmes basically to trial here as well, because he deserves a chunk of the blame with this, because you invested high resources and you're getting nothing back on that return. And I think that's might be the bigger issue, not so much drafting a wide receiver who's not on the field right now because he's dealing with an injury of his own.
Yeah, and you got to remember, guys, Malcolm Rodriguez is playing well, but he's getting exposed too in terms of coverage. Teams are taking advantage of his aggressiveness, his inexperience at seeing different things. You got to remember the run defense was terrible. So while he does possess great ability to make plays, he's not a finished product yet. So that's a plus sign. Aiden Hutchinson we'll talk about here in a few minutes, but it was disappointing. And to circle back to Aaron Glenn, I think that was overhyped. I just think that the starting point was, wow, players love him. and when the league starts to hear that players love coaches. Look, I don't care if the players love Dan Campbell. I don't care if they will fall over backwards and break dance in front of him and get on their knees and praise him. I don't care about that. You know what I mean? I would rather the team hate his guts and win. I would rather have a Bill Belichick than to have a rah-rah coach where everybody loves everybody and everybody's confident and everybody's happy after a loss. I don't want that. I want players to get better. What's disappointed me is the defense hasn't gotten better in 21 games. Not anything better. The tackling, the scheme, the way in which it looks, there is no sign of movement. And like you said, that goes to Aaron Glenn and his coaching ability, goes to Brad Holmes and the talent that you brought in when you basically don't make significant moves to upgrade the defense. This is what you get, especially against Geno Smith, who was basically ripe for the taking, cause all you need to do, you could have gave it up 30 points. You couldn't stop him in any capacity. And I think the highlight was, and the focal point that many people were talking about was, how the fuck do you not stop Rashad Penny on 3rd down and 16? So to set the scene, I'm sitting there in the press box, cover the games, and I have a working relationship with somebody at the Oakland Press who edited our shit for us there at the Oakland Press, who's now moved on and does a gambling project with Play Michigan. So great working relationship. We have him giving us best bets. So obviously you take advantage of someone who's an expert. So on Sunday, I made reasonable, nothing crazy. Started off with a reasonable bankroll and using my smart wisdom just across the way, listening to all the geniuses who give gambling advice every week on podcasts or on Facebook or online. I've made just $10, $15, $20 bet. This one was a little bit more reasonable. Made 2 bets. 1, Jamal Williams anytime touchdown scorer, and 2, Rashad Penny anytime touchdown scorer. So I'm sitting there, Rashad Penny's getting bottled up a little bit. It's 3rd down. All of a sudden there's this hokey wonky play where everyone kind of stops, but there's a whistle and it takes forever to address it with the crowd. The crowd's getting pissed, and then they announce that the first and only time that the Lions would have accomplished a 3rd down stop doesn't count. No, doesn't count. The play never happened. Now, if you watch the film, the Seahawks players stopped. They kind of heard the whistle, those that were near it, so it wasn't a legit play. The fans were pissed because they wanted to see an opportunity to see, they wanted to see a stop. They wanted to see something, and they didn't need a 4-minute delay where the refs are standing there. It just pissed off the crowd. So then, the next running of a play is 3rd and 16. And what happens? The sea parted, and Rashad Penny broke through. And normally, I would be mad. But the thought that permeate is like you're conditioned. I was like, of course that was going to happen. And then I made money. So I was sitting in the press box. Luckily, I tend to sit far away from everybody for personal reasons and things like that. I was sitting in the press box laughing. Because 1, it was funny. 2, it was SOL-esque. And 3, gambling makes the pain of following the Lions a whole lot better. Rashad Penny, bro, how do you not stop him on 3rd and 16? That's what's embarrassing, is the shit that happens is highly unusual. 3rd and 16, you don't give up a darn near 35-yard, 40-yard touchdown run. And then all of this, to bring it full circle, cuz, what's crazy is in all these games that you see with the Lions, all the crap that happens on defense for the first 57 minutes, we can break down, we can analyze. Each game, they just need to make one stop late in the game. They've had opportunities to have that one drive where you say, okay, all the bullshit that we put on tape for the first 57 minutes, if we can just focus on these 4 defensive plays, stop the opponent. Because 3rd down and 6, 3rd down, I think it was 3rd down and 5, 6 or so in that range, late in the game, they give the ball to Rashad Penny, who gets 7 yards. Time and time again, to me, that was the most frustrating, is the time in the game where you absolutely have to focus. The time in the game where you can get the ball back to give to the offense. 4 plays, you cannot stop the opponent from getting 10 yards. And we've asked it all Lions. I asked Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, do you have enough veteran leadership to make plays late? They've talked about that being the focus. every NFL game is usually within 3 to 6 points. But after 21 games, what's disheartening, cuz, is critically at the moments when you need to step up, when your talent needs to rise to the occasion, the Lions fall flat on their ass. And that's what happened this contest. They're not making the plays late, and the defense is at the height of embarrassment. But, hey, if the defense is going to play this bad, take advantage, guys. Bet against, find the offensive players of the opponent, and you damn better bet the Patriots running back to be an anytime touchdown scorer. You have to.
Yeah, and look, I think that kind of segues into what's going on this weekend, right? So you've got New England on the docket here. Lions have to travel to New England, going to be taking on Matt Patricia's offense, and it sounds like possibly a third string quarterback. I mean, this sets up for, and I know when Hard Knocks was going on, and I know this team's been kind of out in front of it, but this sets up for a same old Lions moment. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The most SOL moment, because I could see this team going into New England. I could see this team taking the field, and I could see Matt Patricia running it 67 times and them controlling the clock and end up beating you 22-21. You know?
Yeah.
With a third string quarterback. With a rookie third string quarterback. With Bailey Zappi.
This one is a must win. It's crazy because I don't want to see, because I think Matt Patricia, if he's got any competitive juices, and hearing all the narratives, seeing all the silly articles that are going to come out about him, I would presume that with a week preparation, they may not be willing to let off the gas. This could be a situation in which some revenge could be at play here for New England. They want to get to 2-3, and you recognize that right now the New England Patriots season's on the brink. You could be seeing a real desperate Patriots team, and this is what sucks, cuz, is that you can't have Matt Patricia, who's a defensive coach primarily. He's had experience before coaching offensive line and coaching an offense, but if Matt Patricia, the former disgraced ex-Lions coach, then goes out and embarrasses Aaron Glenn, you're going to have just a whole new set of problems. That's the one thing I'm hoping does not happen. I just hope it's a competitive game, and I hope Matt Patricia doesn't have the last laugh, because I think that would start to derail. Because right now, you would agree that the heat is the most hot on Aaron Glenn. You start to lose to Matt Patricia and get embarrassed by Bill Belichick. You get out-coached. Now we're going to have to turn our attention after 22 games to the regime and Dan Campbell, because Dan Campbell's getting a lot of credit. He's an offensive mind. That's where he played at tight end. He's the one that facilitated the move to get Ben Johnson more work and to make him the offensive coordinator. The offense is purring like a kitten. Everyone likes what's going on that side of the ball, but you're still responsible for the entirety of a game and winning. So I'm just begging the football gods, let the Lions continue to stomp and ruin the Patriots season. I think that would make up for whatever the hell we saw against the Seahawks. Cause did you read 95% of NFL experts picked the Lions to win? They were even without Amon-Ra St. Brown, they were the better football team. And
dude,
it's so embarrassing.
We've talked about that offense. That offense put up, 45 points without their two best players?
Yes.
Like,
why? Why do we
that's
deserve
unreal.
This? The offense. Let's talk about that.
And your defense couldn't stop anything.
Let's talk about that, because I think the area that now we'll start to evaluate over the next few weeks is Jared Goff the guy, seeing that he can lead this offense. I'll say this, guys. Nobody was sitting here saying that Jared Goff was a bum. What they were saying was, this is a good quarterback, but you know how much resources have been put into the Lions offense? It is one of the most costly units in the entire National Football League. It's not sustainable if you want to start signing Aiden Hutchinson and Jamison Williams long-term for big contracts. That method is not going to be sustainable. So the issue with Jared Goff is he's a good player, but at crunch time will make the boneheaded mistake. And what is crazy is the level of denial that football fans have when you say, oh, how is it Jared Goff's fault when he throws a pick six? In a game like that, when your defense blows, that's the absolute last thing you can do. Yes, the offense is scoring points. Yes, you're getting credit, but you have a good offensive line. You have weapons. Imagine just a 15% worse passer, but a 35 to 50% better rusher. that can extend plays with a bigger arm. If you can do this with Jared Goff, could you imagine what Ben Johnson could do with Lamar Jackson or a player that was a little bit more athletic with bigger hands? See, that's what people think, is that they automatically assume that losing Jared Goff would mean failure. I think they're still better. Can you have Jared Goff on this roster? I would be okay with it. But can I tolerate 50% of football games where Jared Goff throws a pick six? Obviously not. It was a bad point in the game. It's your first possession after the halftime where you got to have an adjustment. And the first play in that series, you throw a horrible decision and you throw a pick six. That's the problem. That's Jared Goff. He'll give you great points, but when you need him to not do that, that's what he does, and that's the biggest knock on him. So for me, I would be okay either way. I'm not going to be passionate or too terribly decisive on it, but I would be okay if they use the resources to allocate toward the defense and not pay Jared Goff $30 million a season.
Yeah, I have a hard time giving Jared Goff a contract like that. On top of that, he's going to want years for security, and I just have a problem with that. That's part of the issue with this team, right? Is this team seems to be bad in years, and they'll end up getting a top draft pick, and it's in the years where there's no quarterback, like there's no definitive franchise quarterback there. And look, the way that this season is shaping up right now, they might be headed down the same path as they were last year, where they went into the draft with basically looking to possibly get a quarterback, but there wasn't anybody there, so you had to take the defensive end, which I think we all agree is not necessarily a problem as long as it's going to be a Chase Young type player. Aiden Hutchinson's not performing to that level yet. Maybe he'll get there. Jury's still out. Still very early, rookie. We'll give him some time. But all that being said, that's again one of those drafts where you're looking to invest that pick in a quarterback to help make this team better for the future, and they're just not there. This year, it's looking like it's Bryce Young or bust. Like C.J. Stroud's not looking like any great shakes. The Kentucky quarterback, what is it, Matt? With the
Will Levis.
Yeah, Will Levis. Yeah, Will Levis. Sorry, Will Levis isn't looking like he's any great shakes either. So it's like, I always find it funny because this team will always end up shooting itself in the foot, and it's not even on purpose. It's just the way the cookie crumbles, and it sucks. Like, they're not bad in a year where there's like an Andrew Luck coming out. They're not bad. They're not horribly bad in a year where there's a Joe Burrow coming out. Now, you could have had Tua. You could have had Justin Herbert. Instead, you got Jeff Okudah. We'll see how that plays out. Jury's still out. So it's just, I don't know, man. I can't see giving Jared Goff $30 or $40 million a year. I just don't. I don't know how you do that with financial responsibility and look to help take care of your team for the future. I just don't know how that works. I would be scared shitless of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So give me your prediction. How do you see the Lions shaking out against the Patriots? On the road, it's going to be desperate. I think it's going to be a close game, but I think the Patriots end up walking away because of the just the strengths on defense that they have. I think that their running attack is definitely, they're definitely going to find the ways to pick apart the defense. I think probably it's going to be like a 27-20 kind of loss. And, but it's tough right now because we're recording this the day before the practice that, we're going to see what's going to happen with Amon-Ra St. Brown and DeAndre Swift. I'll just say this, without those two guys, they're going to have no chance to win. If they do, it might be an opportunity to rebound and keep it closer. But I still think at this point in time, when you have such a weakness on defense, it's going to be exploited. So I'm thinking a 4 to 7 point loss with the Patriots going to 2-3.
I see it playing out 24-21 Patriots. And I just think they run the ball. I think you're going to end up playing a rookie third string quarterback. They're going to try to take the ball out of his hands as much as possible. Lions can't stop anybody running the ball. You kind of seen it last week. And I think that's how they end up dying. I think that's what kills them in this game. And I think they go into the bye week.
1-4?
1-4? Yeah.
1-4. Man, that's tough. It's tough to hear. And right now, you and I are both kind of just reacting to the big weakness on defense. You hope that they turn it around. You hope that simplifying things could potentially get this team moving forward. And the one thing that Dan Campbell said if you pay attention to All Lions and the Detroit Sports Podcast, Dan Campbell said that he's going to simplify things. The defense is going to be a little simpler, a little more, maybe not so involved in terms of the intricacies of the plays. Let the boys fly around and see what happens. But let's just hope that it's not a bloodbath, because that just would be the most deflating thing ever. Let's turn our attention to something a little more positive. We're going to talk about college football with our remaining segment here. Michigan, undefeated, doing their thing. And it's nice to talk about a football team doing good things, even though, yeah, their opponents, we can talk about it ad nauseum that the schedule is soft. But bottom line, you play the teams that are on your schedule. Blake Corum is carrying your football team. What are the one or two big takeaways that you see with Michigan, and do you have any concern about their next contest? Because I think that Michigan fans are definitely in a highly anxious group. Not only do you guys want to win, you guys are into style points. You want to just throttle the neck of your opponents, and you want J.J. McCarthy to nail all his deep passes. You want the defense to pitch a shutout. And I understand, though, and I get the premise of what you guys are thinking, which is you guys are extrapolating what you're seeing now versus what they could do against Penn State and Ohio State. And that is valid. If you continue to have these offensive lulls in these football games, then Ohio State's going to kick your ass. So I can understand that, but I fully expect Michigan to get better. And it's a brand of football where you say, this is what we are. We run the football. We try to stop it. We stop our opponents. And with getting some defensive turnovers, with the ability with J.J. McCarthy to manage the game and just not, in this contest at least, not do the thing that's killer, Michigan's undefeated, and they're playing Michigan football to a T. So again, we can repeat ourselves. Jim Harbaugh's coming out with the last laugh because he's got his quarterback, he got his running back, who I think I can ask you honestly now at this point, it's not September anymore. We're in October. I think Blake Corum deserves a seat in New York at this point to be a Heisman candidate. That dude is a physical runner and is doing some great things whenever he's given the football.
I'm going to need you to put that away. Just tuck that someplace. We don't need to talk about that right now. This is my big issue. You kind of touched on it, and you were all over the place with it. It's the quarterback position. I feel like this team is going to live and die with J.J. McCarthy. I think the defense is good enough to cover up a lot of the mistakes and cover up a lot of the errors, but they really haven't faced a high-profile, high-powered offense yet. I think Maryland has a good offense, but I don't think it's to the standard of what Ohio State is. And really and truly, this is a weird year in the Big Ten where it really feels like it's kind of back to like the 1980s, right? Where it's basically Michigan, Ohio State, and everybody else. So yeah, looking ahead, you're like, okay, can the defense weather Ohio State? I think they might, but I'm not necessarily ready to go there 110%. I'm not ready to commit to that. I think offensively, they've got to be a little bit more efficient. And I think what you're getting is you've got a defense that is ready to help you win. You've got an offense that is still trying to figure itself out. Like, you've got J.J. McCarthy, who is essentially a freshman quarterback. Like, this is his first real season playing quarterback, and he's got to learn on the fly, and he's got to make these adjustments. And yeah, he's got a full complement of players, right? Like that wide receiving core is stacked. There are a ton of good wide receivers on that team. The offensive line looks really, really good, especially when Blake Corum is cutting through and slicing everybody up like a hot knife through butter.
Yes.
It's what does J.J. McCarthy do? That's kind of where everything this team's going to live and die with him, and that's what has me the most nervous and has me the most scared, because I don't know if he can put up a prolific game where he helps you win a big game against Ohio State. Now, look, that game is a long ways away. You've got a lot that you've got to get through. You still got to get through Indiana this week, and then at some point you got to take on Penn State, you got to take on Michigan State. So you've got games that you're going to have to round into form, but you just can't see. I don't know. There are just times where he's out there, he just ends up making a bonehead move, and I'm just like, what are you doing with the football?
Right.
Or he'll try to force a pass into triple coverage, and I'm like, what are you doing? If it's a better team, that's going the other way for 6. Like, you can't cost your team. You got to be smart with the football. He still has those tendencies where he's trying to squeeze a round peg into a square hole, and it's just not working, and that makes me the most nervous.
So how much credit?
I think if you're a Michigan fan, just be leery.
Yeah.
And I think it all stems with the quarterback situation.
How much credit do you give Michigan for going into Kinnick and getting their first win in several seasons? Because, bro, I sat there and I love watching good football, okay? And you knew that Iowa was a football team that could simply not score the football. They have set offensive football back decades by what the hell they're trotting out there. I said to myself, honestly, when I sat down to finally get around to watching Michigan, because they're last on my agenda, obviously behind the Lions, the Spartans, and then I get to the Wolverines because I know they're going to win.
I feel like you need to move this around because we're going to talk about Michigan State, and I feel like at this point, wave the white flag if you're Michigan. The white flag, go white flag, go green. Go white flag, go green.
Yeah. And I sat down and I said, okay, probably 3-0 could win this game. Iowa is so porous that Michigan could play a C- offensive game and Iowa could not keep up. I was so embarrassed for that program, and I give Michigan credit because they took that notch off their off their to-do list. But boy, I can't sit here and say that I give Michigan a lot of credit and respect because Iowa is such a disaster offensively.
Yeah, and again, this is kind of where I go back to what we just talked about, right? So I think it's a big deal that you go into Kinnick and you get a win because Kinnick's incredibly difficult to play. Kinnick is incredibly tough to come away with a win. All that being said, you really could have leaned on your defense for that game. I think to this point, right, Michigan has played one team with a good offense and has played one team with a good defense. They've not played a complete team yet. Or anywhere close to a complete team. So what happens when that happens? And that's kind of where some of that concern comes in because you're going to need JJ to be better. He's just not there yet. And you would assume that at this point, this is what, his third year in the program? Second year, I think, right? You would think at this point he would be a little bit better. There'd be a little bit more refinement. And you're just kind of seeing some of those rough edges still. So yes. They still have time. So we'll kind of wait and see.
You feeling good about Michigan beating Indiana?
Yeah, come on.
Yeah. I feel you. I feel you. Of course. They're going to be undefeated, and it's going to be great. I think the next game that you guys should be worried about will be Penn State, and I think that'll be a fun contest to see because you'll match wits with a coach that, even though he sometimes can't close games, at least in 40 minutes of the 60 is always a coach that you can count on to have his team at least thriving and making plays. So we'll see. We'll see as Michigan progresses how they handle business. Now, on the other side of the coin, this is what sucks collectively now recording this podcast after the Spartans game and after the Lions game, is that now the tape is out there on how to expose the Michigan State Spartans defense, and opponents now know that they can gash the defensive line, they can target the secondary, they have the ability to have time of possession, and now what stinks is that I think the confidence of Peyton Thorne has started to dip a little bit where he's not thriving on all cylinders. He's not taking a step forward. He's a good quarterback. This is not a bum, but unfortunately, when you look at the Spartans, the tape is out there, and Minnesota was able to handle business. And it was just a tough week. It was tough all the way around to look at the Spartans and to get up for anything because it's a down year. Now we know it. Now we're talking about, at this point in time, whether the Spartans are going to elevate themselves to be bowl eligible. And so that's where it's going to be a very, very complicated, messy situation. If you don't beat Wisconsin, then you're going to have a tough time potentially looking at getting over the hump, because this week I'm going out there. I'm going to take it like a man. Going to tailgate once a year. I tend to go out to Michigan State and just enjoy the experience. Going to take it like a man, and the Ohio State Buckeyes are going to basically jail sex the Spartans by probably 30 points. It's an opportunity. Luckily, it's a 4:00 game, so I could be under the spell of some good alcohol by then. So if it's an out of control game, get there 9 a.m., have some fun with some friends, and then by 5 o'clock, if it's an absolute shit show, me and the missus can come back home and just say, hey, we went out there for the year. I mean, cause it's no other way to put it. Ohio State's going to come in there and basically destroy Michigan State. And I think it'll be good for the Spartans because it'll just keep putting the pressure on them to really wipe away the taste of this nasty, disgusting season. But I'll take it like a man. You just do it. It's Ohio State. I want to see a good football team and to get a little bit of advanced scouting ahead of Ohio State, Michigan. So it's crazy. It's crazy how good and advanced these college coaches are in regards to when they find, like hawks, when they find your weakness, they just pick at it. And what sucks is that you should know as a Spartan defender that you're going to get targeted. Do they get better 2%? Hell no. They got worse this week.
I think it's going to be a massacre. For Michigan State this week.
Massacre.
It's like, honestly, it's going to be bad. Also, sorry about the dog barking in the background. The mailman decided to show up and the dog freaked out. So that'll give you a little bit of a quick startle there to wake you up. But
yes, sir.
I don't think Michigan State stands a chance this week. And it's kind of sad, right? Because earlier in the year when we did our preview show for Michigan State and we did it for Michigan, I think I had Michigan State going, I think it was 10-2, 11-1. Like I had them contending for the Big Ten championship. Yeah. And this is a team that doesn't seem like it can get out of its own way. And whether it's Scotty Hazelton and the defense or whether it's the offensive line not providing Peyton Thorne enough time as a quarterback, it's been a bit of a frustrating season if you're a Spartan fan. And I don't think that there are any answers. I don't think there's any fix for it this year. I think this is going to be one of those years. You're going to take it on the chops, and you're going to basically take steps back to hopefully next year take a couple steps forward. But it has been surprisingly bad for Michigan State. I think their season is absolutely done at this point.
Yeah, it's done. What sucks is when you look at the Spartans and the way in which it's gone down, it's that the coach is a tough-nosed coach. And I know you can't compare Mel Tucker to Nick Saban, but just to throw it out there, Nick Saban won the national title his second year at Alabama. Okay, 2 years, undefeated, 14-0, 8-0 in the conference, and won the national title. Now, it just goes to show you in this day and age, you can't just plug and play college football players. That's not the case at Michigan State. But you know what I think happened psychologically is Mel Tucker made the program feel like Alabama. Not like in terms of results, but like, wow, we got a big donor. We got these big bad facilities. We got this big bad ex-Nick Saban coach that we got this. But unfortunately, you went into it with a defensive coordinator that has no answers for what is ailing the Spartans defense. So that's where the biggest problem lies, is that the Spartans kind of raised expectations a little early, but they're still in program building mode. So that's the tough part, is you're asking for patience. I'm patient. It just sucks because you juxtapose that now with Jim Harbaugh, and he's now rolling in his, I think, 8th year coaching Michigan. So it's disappointing. It stinks. This team might not be bowl eligible, but I look at it and I say, I'm not going to write him off. I'm not going to write Mel Tucker off just yet. What I'm going to say is, you got to take your medicine, you got to learn from it, and you got to recognize that you got to overhaul this defensive crew and take your medicine, handle business, do what you got to do, and hopefully don't let this embarrassment that happens at Spartan Stadium kind of become a confidence shaker, because it can quickly rattle your cage if you get down 40, 50 nothing. So might be an opportunity to get some young players some run, but boy, it's going to take a heavy amount of alcohol to weather that. But it's okay. I'll do it. You got to handle business sometimes. You got to see the good teams, and that's what I'm going to do this weekend, because that was fun. That was a great 45 minutes. Now I'll give you guys some insight heading into the Lions to hear Dan Campbell try to start now the narrative. I do believe the narrative now is going to turn to Matt Patricia and the New England Patriots along with the defense. So you guys, I love it. I love firing up the 45 minutes to an hour talking with Adam, the Jock Strozinski, who you can follow on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Whatever we do, whether we're driving, traveling, whether Adam's in Mexico, Germany, Brazil, if Adam's traveling the world or I'm getting out and about from the practice to the Allen Park practice facility, we will find ways to record a podcast. And that's why we love it, because you guys engage with us, you tell great jokes, and you download our content. Anywhere you listen to your favorite broadcast, type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our podcast will find you. And that's why we do it. We've been doing it now almost a decade, cuz where the fuck did the time go? Whether it be Adam at home or me in the studio or both together, come hell or high water, the best part of our week is talking shit and bringing the noise. Often imitated, never, ever duplicated. We are the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.